Okay, how's that watch lead?
Yep, that's good. Thank you. If we're on the move.
Let's zoom out, and I gotta push ahead, Tara.
So yeah, Tina, we'll try to get you that, but yeah, we're just on a move here. We'll get you.
You said we're settling out.
So yeah, beautiful imagery of a couple of these Walteria sponges. And so this is a commatulate crinoid. So there are kind of two different subgroups within the crinoids. There are stocked ones and then unstocked. These unstocked are commonly referred to as feather stars. The stocked forms are commonly referred to as sea lilies.
I lost it. All right.
And that's
zoom out.
Going to be in the genus Clyptometra, and the species
position for about a minute and
Clyptometra lateralis.
Okay, I'm coming up.
Ahead of me at
035I.
And yeah, this is already beautiful. Gives you a nice appreciation of this fairly moderate density. We'll see as how this density of animals continues to progress as we move upwards. We expect to see kind of the highest aggregation set animals towards the very top of this feature, close to the summit. And
I don't know when you want me to call that ship move in. Yep. Okay.
So there's going to be an interest. So not that massive sponge to the left, but the one that's right next to it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
We're settling.
We're not moving right now, right? So we got time. Okay.
Ship is stopped. Sirius is swinging but settling.
Okay. Is this something you want to get a close zoom on, or just a quick shot to get an idea of what it is?
Yeah, quick shot will be okay.
So go ahead, video.
And then, in particular, the base.
The base. Coming in towards the wall. Hold on. It's all right. And set down.
Yeah, no, it's hidden. But yeah, in the background we have Bathypathis species. That's another black coral.
Can't really see the base from this angle, but
yeah, that's all right. Okay. We'll get one after, but. So that's a different hexactinellate sponge. I believe it's going to be a bolosoma.
Okay.
It's definitely going to be in that family of the Euplectellidae. Yeah, it seems like the most abundant sponges here are these Walteria sponges, and then these Poliopogon for the corals, the unbranched bamboo corals. And it's kind of interesting because we dove on bank 9, which is to our...
Go ahead, Nav.
Yeah, can we get a ship move? 40 meters, bearing 3.
Sorry?
5.
Did you hear what I said?
No.
At a speed of
Okay,
0.2 knots.
So we dove off bank 9, which is also thought to be part of it. Cretaceous in origin, is about 30 miles northwest of us. And at that site, the community was, at least for the species composition, similar. So yeah, one very nice thing about the Hawaiian archipelago as a kind of a natural laboratory is that you have an enormous gradient, a spatial gradient, as well as depth gradient. So the lower Hawaiian Islands,
sorry, buddy.
The big island of Hawaii is at a latitude of 19 degrees or 19 and a half, and then Curie Atoll, the very furthest island, is at a latitude of 30 degrees north. So we have a geographic range spanning across both the tropics and subtropics.
Okay, let's zoom out.
And so that's for shallow waters, of course. So yeah, what we were looking at there are these ophiuroid echinoderms. Those are brittle stars.
So Dan, the ship move doing 035 at 2/10 has begun.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll start swinging with that.
So yeah, I was talking about this very large geographic range that we have in the Hawaiian Islands. That allows us to investigate questions about using the island chain kind of as a laboratory and what causes these differences in species composition. Yeah, Hawaii has for a very long time been one of the favorite playing grounds for many natural scientists, including biologists, geologists. It's just one of these very beautiful places where you have a large gradient of different factors and influencing.
Yeah, and Hawaii has been an integral part in developing our theory of plate tectonics for geologists. The age progression of the islands, younger in the southeast, getting older to the northwest, basically gives us an estimate of how fast the plate was moving versus how quickly those Hawaiian volcanoes formed on top of the Pacific plate. And Hawaii is central into geophysical investigations of plate tectonics and the movement of the Pacific plate over the past not only million years, but up to 80 million years of history of plate tectonics. So these linear underwater seamount chains that have age progressions was one of the very first clues into figuring out the fact that the surface of our planet is actually not a static and unmoving bit, but on a geological timescale over millions of years is actually quite dynamic.
Got a little time here, watch lead. Anything you want to see?
The coral to the left. Yeah, that's the first time I've seen him, and I think that's going to be a black coral in the genus Trisopathes. That's, if that's the case, that would be the first record for this dive. And also just updated our position in the Fledermaus spray. So we covered about 160 meters on the dive so far. We're still about 400 meters from the summit of this feature, which is just about 100 meters shallower than we are right now. And yeah, this is going to be very interesting. So there's we see a couple very interesting squat lobster perching on top of that black coral.
Okay, let's zoom in video.
So yeah, that's definitely going to be in the genus Trisopathes.
Just trying to perch my...
And I don't know if Mary is joining us today, and those are some very interesting looking squat lobsters.
While you've got this nice and stable,
as we're getting a close-up again, mentioned earlier that this is a two-body ROV operation where Sirius is looking down at D2, and if you take a look at the Sirius cam, you can get an idea of how steep the topography is in this little area. We're basically looking directly at a wall that seems to have at least a 45-degree slope.
You want to not only drive forward, but a little right to sort of shove that toe in.
That's a beautiful imagery of this squat lobster. But that purple coloration is a little bit different of all the animals we have in our guide. So I know at least a couple specialists are going to be very delighted with this information. and this imagery in particular. So the black coral there to the that this squat lobster is sitting on. Black corals are interesting. So here in Hawaii, that's the official gemstone of the state of Hawaii. Ikahakumoana, as black coral is known in the native Hawaiian language.
Used to have that joy lock button on top of the joystick.
Was used by native Hawaiians, or has been used by native Hawaiians for a long time.
Yeah, let's go ahead and zoom out. Sorry,
To
get a full shot.
produce a series of remedies to treat a series of lung diseases and other ailments. And then those squat lobsters,
Zoom out.
those are also common inhabitants of the deep sea. You typically see them in many of these environments, typically perched on top of corals. Squat lobsters are different from the true lobsters in that their carapace is kind of flattened like a pancake from the belly to the back. They will have
Losing
a
a
little
lock.
over 900 described species, but probably many more that still need to be described. And they include some species that are harvested commercially
It's the altimeters inside the vehicle, so it's not.
as food. If you've ever seen langostino on the menu, that is typically a squat lobster. And so there's several species that are harvested commercially and used for food. So yeah, maybe that sponge to our right that we just passed, that's going to be of interest.
The one there?
Yep.
Bottom right?
Yep.
Okay.
And
How
yeah,
much
that
time do I have co-pilot?
Got a few minutes. Or a minute. I think the ship is stopping.
Yep, ship is just stopping, so you should be
okay.
golden.
Do you want a close look or just a quick shot? Watch lead.
probably no, just yeah. If we're on the move, I
Zoom
could.
in. Video.
Snapping.
So yeah, we see again different organisms here. So that's a glass sponge, and then we see many ophiuroids coiled around the stalk, and then you see a couple of crinoids at the top, and then the top of the head. So this is a sponge that actually we imaged last year quite a bit, and this is a completely new subgenus. So this is going to be in the genus Caulophacus, and we don't even know what subgenus it is, but typically in this genus you have a single one of those heads. Now we've seen a couple of these which have multiple heads, and it's a completely new subgenus which will need to be created for this very unusual growth form. Yeah, beautiful, and there's time and time again illustrating why we are looking for these coral and sponge communities. So corals and sponges are their major habitat producing fauna on these deep reefs. They create habitat for many other invertebrates which live either on or inside the sponges or corals. And that's why we're so interested in finding them, because once you find these places where you have dense aggregations, yeah, that was good, pilot, thank you. So once you do find these corals and sponges, you typically find all kinds of other animals.
Pilots, what heading are you guys thinking for the next move? I'm thinking like 45.
Hey, Okeanos Explorer, this is the Silver Spring Exploration Command Center.
Hi, good morning. Is this Katie?
This is Katie.
Aloha, how we doing?
With Explorers, and they're excited to see what you're working on today.
Excellent. So welcome, young explorer. You're watching images. We're currently diving in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, and these are images. We're over a mile deep. So yeah, you're watching this video at the same time that we're watching it. So any questions you might want to ask?
thing you've seen
I've
today?
got the sonar's got a
The coolest thing we've seen today, well, I think all of it, because this is the very, very first time that we actually imaging this seamount. So this is actually an underwater mountain that is over 11,000 feet tall. So it's certainly much taller than any mountain that you would have close to Silver Spring or any place on the East Coast for that matter. And we had never looked on it before, so this is the very first time that we're videoing a mountain that is enormous, as well as all the inhabitants on it.
Yeah.
might have fallen off.
Yeah, and this submarine mountain or seamount is actually a
Flat
extinct
mounted up
volcano that we think is
Yeah,
really,
I guess-
really old. Could be up to 80 million years old. And since no one has ever dove on this seamount before, we've never had any rocks collected from it before. And the reason we're collecting some rocks is because the rocks will help us get an absolute age of the volcano itself. So we think that it's really old, and the rock that we collected earlier is going to help us determine how old it is. So that was absolutely one of the coolest things that I've seen on this dive as a geologist so far, was the fact that we actually were able to obtain a rock sample early on. And the reason that that's so special is, as you can tell, a lot of the surface is very cemented together by this black coating that you're looking at. It's called a manganese crust, and it inorganically precipitates on these rock surfaces as the rock surface ages and ends up cementing all of our loose rocks together, making it very difficult to collect. So the fact that we were very fortunate in touching down on the bottom today in a region that had some loose rocks is a great success early on in our dive today.
Based on the bathymetry.
Great,
Nav
thanks
co-pilot.
so much. I think we have a question.
Go ahead.
What
Looks like you got a hard return on Sirius. Maybe a clear.
yeah, that's this region here, I think.
The question is if we've seen animals today that we haven't seen before.
Yes, absolutely, and that's a great question. So on this particular dive,
Flat.
a couple of squat lobsters before. Those were completely new. But this is the fifth dive of this particular exploration, and then we've already added a bunch of, I would say, several dozens of things that we hadn't seen before, and also collected a couple of specimens of things that we had never seen before. And also to put that more into context, so last year we had an expedition on this same ship in this same region, during which we did a total of 18 dives. During those 18 dives, we imaged several hundred of species that we did not know exist or did not know existed in this region. And we came back with 35 specimens, every single one of which was either a completely new species or something that we did not know existed in this part of the Pacific.
Oh, man.
So I think
The current question is, what are you looking at on the screen right now?
we should at least do a 30-meter.
So that is a...
So I think
The current question is, what are you looking at on the screen right now?
we should at least do a 30-meter.
So that is a tube-dwelling anemone. So these are a little bit different than anemones. So you folks might know anemones. So they're commonly seen in aquaria. Now anemones are different from this group in that you don't have. So in this group, what you're seeing is you can see those tentacles there for that polyp, and you see kind of very short ones around the mouth, and then a more elongated ones on the outside. And also the main body has kind of a distinct tube. So that's a little bit different than the anemones that most people are more familiar ones. And yeah, this is also commonly seen here in the deep sea.
So yeah, you guys are ready for a move here?
Yeah, what's the direction of the up the peak?
And we had another question about if we've ever discovered shipwrecks on our exploration.
That's coming out at?
So on this particular expedition, not yet, but up here in the area that we're diving on, there's many shipwrecks, and a lot of them are in much shallower water. So the islands that we're diving on here have, there's actually a lot of important whaling ships that ran aground in this area, and we know of over 100 shipwrecks or other maritime archaeological resources in the area, including many whaling ships from the 18th century, and then there's also some artifacts from the Battle of Midway. And so, yeah, in this area, we found many before, but as I mentioned, a lot of those are in a lot shallower waters than what we are targeting on this expedition.
30 meters, 30 meters, bearing 035 at a speed of 0.2 knots.
Confirm, 30 meters, bearing 035 at 0.2 knots.
Thank you, Bridge.
Sorry, video, can you repeat? Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful view. Here, we're coming up this ridge, and then we're basically going parallel to the crest of the ridge. Any other questions, Katie, from the group?
We do have one more question, and that's how your onboard scientists got into deep sea exploration. How did you get on this career path?
I'll let Jonathan answer first here.
Well, let's see. So I started out in the middle of the country, far away from any ocean or underwater exploration. However, I got into my interest in volcanoes while studying volcanoes that were actually extinct in Colorado. And then as my interest grew, I went to grad school at the University of Hawaii in Manoa, and my previous and current research is focused on all the Hawaiian volcanoes along the Hawaiian archipelago. And I first came out to this region for ocean exploration in a mapping expedition with Daniel almost 2 years ago, where we came out here and imaged some of the seafloor surface for the very first time, and that was very exciting. We're actually using some of the imagery that we collected doing multi-beam mapping on that cruise to provide information about interesting dive sites for this cruise. And so from that point on, been working in close coordination with some of the same individuals that I was on that cruise with, and here we are out here again, and now we're not using multi-beams to explore, we're using high-definition video cameras to get a closer look at some of these most amazing features in the Hawaiian archipelago.
Yeah, and for myself, I'm going to say it really started very young age. I've always been fascinated with the outdoors, playing outside, getting away from cities, going into nature. It's always fascinated me, even when I was a little kid, and just getting away and exploring. Like, there's so much still to be discovered and to be seen, and as I started diving, I really gave a way to get away quickly from the world. So for those of you who snorkel or perhaps scuba dive, there's even in places like Honolulu or big cities where, if you look above the surface, you might see cities, but as soon as you duck down and look underneath the surface, you have a relatively pristine place underneath, and it's right at our fingertips. And so that's kind of always sparked my interest, that there's so much left to be explored, and yeah, I'm very lucky and fortunate that I get to do this and see these images, and I'm so happy that we get to share it with you.
Great.
Sorry, I wasn't sure what you were wanting to get. Okay. Is that good?
Yep. We can. On your butt.
Oh, yes, we have another question, and that is, how old are you onboard scientists?
Jonathan, me, is 27 years old.
Thanks, Bo.
And I'm Daniel, and I'm 33 years old.
So I'm sorry, is the ship underway or are we...
Ship's underway, moving closer to you. 735.
Aloha, mahalo.
Did I hear one more question?
Oh, yeah. Right, and one more question from
Oh.
here. Yep.
Close to you.
How do you decide
Trying to sort out where the next local high is.
ROV? Yeah. How did they build the ROV? We have a question about how did you build the ROV?
How did we build the ROV? Well, I think I'm not qualified, or we're both probably not the right people to request. We actually have an enormous ROV and engineering team here on ship, close to a dozen folks who all work closely together, and yeah, so they put this thing together, and it was absolutely amazing, the technology that this thing has. The vehicle that you're seeing, the images now, is equipped with 9 high-definition video cameras, a lot of other very high-tech equipment, and the team is very talented, and they're actually their dive supervisor is my roommate, and I've gotten to talk with him a lot, and they're actually building now, designing a small ROV that's going to be used in Yellowstone, and that's very fascinating. Now that's for you young folks, it's a different career path in engineering, and if you're like tech savvy and like that side, it's there's different ways to get into this kind of field. But yeah, it's just unbelievable the technology that these vehicles are equipped with. And so this is now a true anemone. So that's different than what we saw before.
Swing, probably.
Thanks.
Full zoom.
Well, great, Okeanos. Thank you so much for answering our questions, and we're going to be signing off.
Thank you so much. So yeah, that was Katie Wagner joining us from Silver Spring, one of the communication managers for the NOAA's Office of Exploration and Research, and with a group of school students who are joining us from Silver Spring. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us and getting excited about exploration, because there's so much left to be discovered. And
All right, let's stretch out at 045 and see how it looks.
Okay.
Just center yourself basically in this view. If you don't mind.
Yep.
Stretching really far out.
Okay.
You might want to.
so there's an urchin to our right, purple urchin that we just passed. Are going to be first record for this dive.
All right. I'm going to set down. Get a good view of it.
So yeah, I think this is going to be, last year we imaged a couple of these, and those were tentatively ID'd as
There we go. Okay.
Tromicosoma hispidum.
Okay. Zoom in video. I'm going to take my camera. Or actually, I got it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we imaged last year. But our first urchin on this, actually on this dive. Beautiful imagery. So urchins are also echinoderms. So they're closely related to sea cucumbers, sea stars, brittle stars, and they're characterized by having radial 5-sided symmetry.
Guess we should get lasers on it.
Yeah, let's take a quick, but yeah, beautiful imagery of this urchin. Tentative ID is Tromicosoma hispidum.
If we could tilt down just a touch, I'll zoom in. I'd like to get the 2 feet. Great. Perfect.
I am still swimming towards you a little, but you're still plenty safe.
Okay.
So pilot, also, I'm going to keep my eyes open. So there's this kind of coiled, unbranched coral that we keep seeing that's kind of greenish. I don't know if that one in the background is, but at some point I think we might want to collect one during this dive because it's different than what we've imaged before. But they're common enough that we might have some flexibility.
Is it the one just above the ocean?
I believe so. I couldn't get a good look at it.
Zoom in video?
It doesn't need to be that one, but yeah, it seems to be common enough that, yeah, exactly, that's what it is. So whenever you're set up to do so, it's going to be interesting to collect that.
Do you want to get that particular stock, or?
We're set up.
Yeah, if you're set up,
Okay.
but
Double back in the background there too.
yeah, it just seems abundant enough, and
Okay.
we don't know what it is
I know.
more than the genus.
Might be easier if I get over and set up next to that that little lip there, because then the camera will be pointed more at the dark background. I don't know, what do you think? Instead of looking.
For this guy.
Well, we could go for a.
and look backwards.
Or no, we could go for a different stock on the ledge.
Watch lead. Are you looking at the main HD?
Yes.
Do you see up in the upper left? Do those look like the same thing? Those.
Yeah, those coiled, yeah, in the background. Well, yeah, this. The one that I'm thinking, yeah, is this greenish, and it's kind of wispier, and it's
We'll just go for this one then. Okay. Do you think the arm can reach it from here? Or?
Yeah.
Can? Okay.
current depth is 1,703 meters. If you joined us recently, this is a very exciting dive. We are diving on a unnamed seamount that up until 2 years ago had never been mapped. It had never been surveyed, imaged, or sampled before, and this is the very, very first time that we're bringing you images from what is an enormous feature.
I think there's one by my right, too.
So this seamount, in fact, is for those folks who are know Hawaii. This seamount is actually taller than Haleakala, and up until recently, we didn't even have good maps of it. Just illustrating how much of these remote places we still don't know about. In fact, the ocean as a whole, over 95% or close to 95% of it hasn't been mapped in detail. So a lot of these, even enormous features, remain to be discovered, and it's very exciting to image these places for the very first time.
I've been sitting right about here for a while. See if it's serious, but I'll keep an eye. Can we iris down on the HD2 a little so you can get a view on this?
Sure thing, pilot. Stand by.
So with this,
So
if I want to go into a weaker grip lock, no, it's fine.
so we're going to try, right now we're set up to try to collect this black coral. This is a unbranched black coral. It's going to be in the genus Stichopathes for now. Relatively common inhabitant of these reefs down here, these deep water communities. And
Yeah, let's zoom in on.
it's common enough.
I'll get the arm out there first.
And also, we don't know what it is that we have decided is
We'll image it when I
collectible. And so, yeah, that's something that we're looking throughout this dive, is looking for specimens that we don't know what they are, and that they're common in the community, so that once we get these specimens, examine them in the laboratory, and get an identification that gives us at least a bigger portion of what the community consists of.
Just going to get it close, and then I'll have you zoom in on Zeus Plus and bring up or zoom in on Mini Zeus as well. Okay, can we zoom in on Zeus Plus?
Holding partial.
Yeah, let's zoom in on Mini Zeus as well.
So yeah, this black coral that we're about to collect, that's going to be no genus. I mentioned Stichopathes, and that pathes is commonly used for the black coral genera as kind of a suffix. So you'll hear this a lot: Antipathes, Stichopathes, Bathypathes, Aphanipathes, and so the original, this whole group, the black corals, so they're Antipatharians. So antipath literally means against evil or against bad things. So humans have for a long time used black coral for medicinal purposes. Different civilizations, including here in Hawaii, as well as in other parts of the world. In a lot of Asian cultures, black corals are used to produce different medicines.
So which box do we want to put this in?
Romans actually also produced different remedies that were used.
Yeah, we can image.
And so that's just in a more traditional sense of medicine, but then different kind of artifacts made out of black coral will also kind of worn around the neck and other jewelry pieces. And the thought was that by wearing these kind of amulets, that would fend off disease, and that's why this whole group is named antipath or antipathogen, against evil or against harmful things. So yeah, beautiful job there by Dan, our pilot. Just collected this black coral.
Okay, let's go. Full wide, both cameras.
Relatively common
bio box.
here at these steps, but we don't have the ID for this species yet. So yeah, we're delighted with this collection, because that will help us characterize one species that seems to be an important
we'll get the port
component of this community.
Thank you.
How's that?
That's good.
Okay. All right, ready to open the box?
Ready to open the box.
Another interesting kind of fact about black corals, I talked about medicines being done with them. Now it's also used in the jewelry industry. So the common name of black coral comes from the color of the skeleton. So right now you see this individual looks kind of yellowish or greenish, and that's because the tissues have a different color. Underneath the tissues, you would see the skeleton, and that is dark brown to black in coloration. So it's that skeleton that's used to produce jewelry and other species, not in this one, but there's some species that kind of form massive trunks, and those trunks can be then polished to produce a stone to kind of manufacture jewelry. And there's also kind of several reports of actually people that work in this industry that do the polishing, that they have several allergic reactions to when they grind the black coral. And it's also, I've heard reports of some neurological disorders that are actually developed in people that in higher abundance than in people that work in polishing and grinding the black coral, so suggesting that there might be some very potent or important compounds, bioactive compounds in the skeleton itself.
Okay.
That's my feedback. I won't talk in your ear while you're doing it.
Okay, well, thanks. Appreciate it.
Final kind of note. So yeah, black coral is the official gemstone of the state of Hawaii. Hawaii is the only state in the United States that has a living organism as their official gemstone. So these are culturally important organisms here in Hawaii. Even though black corals, they're typically found in deeper waters, so typically below about 150 feet or so is where you see them. But even though that they're found at these depths, Hawaiians have known about these organisms for a very long time, and actually used them to produce several remedies.
Make sure you open your jaws nice and slow in this position.
Yeah, this is a very interesting group that we know very little about, and that's a common theme for some of these groups that are predominantly found in the deep sea, is that we have very little information about them.
Feather it out, but hold on.
We have about 250 species of black corals worldwide that we know of.
Thank you.
But many left to be described, such as this one right here. That's almost guaranteed to be a new species. We have this kind of wired form. There's one that is very similar in morphology in shallower waters, and about 100 meters and so, and that's Stichopathus acuminata, a species that was collected in many places throughout the world by the Challenger expedition for the first time. But this one, now we're over a mile deeper, and it's I can almost guarantee it's going to be different.
Are you thinking about ship moves? You want to explore a little bit first?
Can talk to Watchlead maybe and see what he wants to do.
Yeah, right now I'm looking at him at 75 degrees down, so we're going to let him get situated here.
Copy that.
Stowed.
How's
We're going to reach out and get the general eye for the area.
So yeah, we just secured our first biological specimen of this dive.
Good. I tried to stow it inboard.
Oh, that's perfect.
A black coral specimen. Earlier in our dive, we secured a geological sample. So these are the very first specimens that have been collected from the seamount. This is the very first time we're imaging the seamount, and it's very exciting that you can all join us.
Coral cutters, but when I had already grabbed it, I was afraid I'd cut it, and I didn't want to let go and drop it, so just went with it.
So just to update everyone, we're about 350 meters or so away from the summit of this feature. We're currently at 1,700 meters. The summit is at just around 1,600 meters.
All right.
Also to give folks a little heads up, so today's dive is going to go till about 3:30 Hawaii Standard Time. So we will have a nice extended dive today, another 4.5 hours or so on the bottom. And yeah, it's quite exciting to have this much time on a feature that has never been dove on before. Yeah, thank you, pilot. Very, very exciting sample.
Oh, I just lost starboard minute. There we go.
Hi, Daniel. This is Alan Andrews in Hawaii. Can you hear me?
Yes, Alan. Good morning. How are we doing?
Doing all right. Joining you a little bit late, but I wanted to comment that the stream is very intermittent and interrupted. I'm wondering if everybody else is having the same problem.
Yeah, Alan. So there's been a little bit of a discussion at the chat room. So actually, there's a kind of interesting phenomena. So we're because of where we are. So there's this sun fate that's happening. So that's kind of a special because of this time of the year and where we are. and problems with the satellites. So that's something that we're going to be experiencing for the next few days or so. So part of it is out of our reach. But I appreciate you commenting. Yeah, I just learned about the sun phase just yesterday. I was completely unaware that there's this kind of intricate and this peculiar interplay between the place where the sun is in relation to the satellites and where we are, and that's something that we will continue to experience for the next few days.
Just a bit of a depression.
Okay, I'll just keep you on, and hopefully it'll clear up a little later.
Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, and I also just wanted to thank everyone for joining us, all of our shore-based scientists on the Saturday. Really appreciate it.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Come back down.
Well, I have to say it's amazing stuff. I hope the video feed clears up. Yesterday was quite nice for some of the fishes as well.
Yeah. So this is a box jelly, I believe. 4 tentacles. I know we've been having a little bit of trouble with the stream, but I don't know if anyone can see that. I don't know this group that well.
Alright, he's getting tossed around in my thruster wash. Okay. Or maybe
So yeah,
just a little far away
I totally agree with you, Alan. Just absolutely spectacular imagery, and yeah, I just want to point out that it's such a unbelievable collaboration, and so many talented individuals working together to bring you those images. So yeah, we have the pilots of the ROVs, we have the videographers, our navigator. We have close to over 40 people here on the ship working. And then many more on shore to provide you these images, and yeah, I think the final product and these spectacular high definition images, we kind of after a while you start to expect it, but it's unbelievable, the technology, and then yeah, and then just considering how remote we are, so we are over 1,000 miles away from Honolulu, over a mile deep, and you guys are seeing these images at the same time we see them up here.
What distance do you guys want?
30 meters at least.
Okay.
You could even do 40.
Yeah, I'll do 40.
Oh, yeah, excellent. So Scott has provided, both Scott and Tina, I appreciate that ID, so that that jellyfish that we just imaged is a Narcomedusa, and likely in the genus Aegina. So thank you for that.
At a speed of 0.2 knots.
Sure. Stand by.
Thank you, Bridge.
Nav bridge, move initiated. I just want to confirm, 40 meters, 03035?
Yes, Bridge, that is correct.
Okay, we're moving.
Thank you.
Okay, so 035.
035I.
Already pushed out quite a bit, so
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just back up.
So just went ahead and updated our position. We're about 350 meters away from the summit. So far in the dive, we've covered about 200 meters of horizontal space. We landed just over an hour and a half ago, and we landed at a depth of 1,750 meters. We're now 50 meters shallower and about 200 meters away, and still have about 350 meters in horizontal distance from the summit here.
Did we just start that move, guys?
Yep.
If we want to take a geological sample, we need to figure that out now and stop the ship if we do.
Is that something you'd be interested in doing here, Watch Lead, is taking a geological sample?
I was thinking about it, but there's a surprising amount of loose rock material so far that we've encountered on the dive, so I don't want to stop our progress since we're trying to make a little bit of headway up the ridge. So let's just go ahead and push on through, and
Okay.
fingers crossed we'll come across another talus debris slope like this.
There's I think, yeah, either an amphipod just past us. Yep.
Well, maybe since we're not going to sample, we can just get a close look at some of these rocks if you want to zoom in video. We got some time. Oh, there's a little
Yeah, it's a kind of
coral or something at the top.
that purple, yeah.
And don't forget, you're probably a little heavy.
But yeah, so here, this is what Jonathan was pointing out earlier, is just how thick the crust is. And some of these rocks that might give us an indication of the age. That black kind of material that you see on the rocks, that's a precipitate that forms in seawater at these depths and temperatures and conditions. And that's one of the slowest geological processes we know of. Oh, that's interesting. So what are we looking at? So I think this is a stoloniferan octocoral. So, no.
Pulls.
So we imaged something somewhat like that last year. I don't see the stolon, so what I'm looking for are these kind of root-like structures that are on the substrate. Yeah, so I agree with you, Scott. So this looks more like a young, the only purple genus we have here in Hawaii is Victorigorgia, and the species nutting eye. And yeah, so that's a good find.
Okay, zoom out video.
Yep.
A little far from it. But
So yeah, nutting eye, so named after Professor Nutting, who in the early 1900s published descriptions of the soft and gorgonian corals that were collected by the Albatross expedition that actually sampled not too far away from here. So they spent several months up here in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands and sampled as far north as Laysan Island and collected samples actually as deep as 3,000 meters with some dredges.
yeah, was that 035 or 045?
035.
Okay. Sirius is off by a little bit to starboard.
But yeah,
flat just dropped.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
If you're on it.
Yeah.
So
I have to disable.
Yeah, you
we
might
are
wanna come
looking
up
here
off.
at an unbranched bamboo coral, and that's it's going to be in the genus Lepidopsis for now. So a lot of these groups, you'll hear us pointing out names and giving tentative IDs. So there's actually a lot of scientists that are working on these groups right now. not just describing the species, but kind of like trying to even come up with a framework with the higher level taxonomic grouping, so things like genera, families. So in a lot of these species, like even the taxonomic hierarchy hasn't been established, and there's a lot of reshuffling around and names changing on a very rapid basis. And
just crap over to center
it's
screen,
it's a
maybe.
field that there's a lot of remaining to be done for you young folks who might be joining us. There's so much work to be done, and really needing some talent and some passionate individuals to work in.
Looks like we're going diagonally up this. But
Yeah, it looks like we have about five. The ship has about 5.
So as Dan gets his biological plug-in for future biologists, I just want to make everyone aware that there is actually some opportunities for future geologists to start working on some of these Cretaceous seamounts. An incredible amount of effort has been put into understanding the Hawaiian volcanoes, and that is because it's so critical to understand how the entire Earth works as a whole. And Hawaii is not only the key to understanding plate tectonics, it's also the key to understanding the Earth's deep interior, since the main mechanisms in which generate the Hawaiian hotspot are thought to originate deep within the mantle at the mantle core boundary. So Hawaii has been a integral part in our understanding of not just the surface of the Earth, but the interior as well. But turns out that we're diving today on a volcano that is most likely not of Hawaiian origin, meaning that it's not the same age as the Hawaiian Islands, didn't form from the same processes, and is actually Cretaceous in age. We know a little bit about the age of some volcanoes that are of similar age and shape around us. They're about 80 to 85 million years.
Quite a bit.
And
maybe we should point a little bit
the
more
seafloor that they formed on is actually another 10 to 20 million years older than them. So that's 10 to 20 million years of time where the ocean floor was generated, and the ocean floor moved away from the mid-ocean ridge where it was formed, and then all of a sudden volcanoes started erupting on the ocean surface 10 to 20 million years later. So some of these mechanisms are not well known and documented, and is a whole new branch of geology and marine geology and exploration that is going to be an opportunity for future geologists to get into. So if you're interested in underwater volcanoes and putting together the history of extremely old processes, then Cretaceous seamounts like the one we're diving on right now is the place you're going to want to be.
Excellent. If we have a second, so it looks like there might be those long kind of filaments coming off of it. I think that might be a benthic ctenophores.
Sorry, where watch lead?
So towards the top of the sponge, you see those long filaments.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, so there's I believe are tentacles of benthic ctenophores.
Could we rotate a little bit, pilot? This might be a difficult angle with the bright sponge right in front of them.
But yeah, this again.
Let me just try to set down, and then we'll maybe be able to adjust the lights. If not, I can move around.
Beautiful shot here. This is another glass
get up.
sponge, and so this is again genus Walteria.
we don't have long here.
And so this species is nutting-eyed. Then you see some brittle stars or ophiuroids on it, and some crinoids. And what I'm looking at is towards the top there. You can actually see these filaments coming off. And what I believe it is a benthic ctenophore. And
I think it's...
yeah, so actually right there. Yeah. So that's exactly what we're looking for, those kind of flat objects there. So those are, ctenophores, or comb jellies, as they're commonly known, are typically known for being pelagic or living in the water column. But there's one group, the plactinid ctenophores, that are benthic. So they're specialized for being living on the benthos, so attached to the substrate. These are remarkable.